You know, the world as we know it is standing right on the precipice of a massive, completely silent technological shift. For years now, the story of quantum computing has pretty much been written in the West, right? It's been a story defined by massive, power-hungry machines that require temperatures colder than deep space just to function. But recently, a sudden breakthrough from the East threatens to rewrite that entire narrative. On May 7, 2026, a leaked, almost dossier-style announcement out of Wuhan, China, revealed a machine that doesn't just compute, it literally reimagines the physical limits of quantum hardware. Which leaves us staring down a really high-stakes question. What exactly happens when the world's most powerful, world-altering technology no longer needs the world's coldest temperatures? We aren't just looking at a routine processing upgrade here. We are witnessing a high-stakes geopolitical contest for survival, rapid deployment, and absolute control over the edges of tomorrow. And so that brings us to our mission for this explainer. We're going to decode the hardware of this newly announced Hanyuan 2 system, cut straight through the state media hype, and uncover the impartial truth behind this room temperature black box. We'll examine the data, hunt down the missing pieces, and look at the sheer scale of the strategy at play. I invite you to play investigator alongside me as we unpack this whole mystery. Just look at this headline for a moment from the South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. China unveils Hanyuan 2, the world's first dual-core quantum computer. Unlike other models, the machine does not need to be kept at ultra-low temperatures and is easier to maintain. With that said, let's go straight to the intro. The algorithm buries channels that show the truth like mine every single day. The only thing that fights back is you. One like, one subscribe, turn on the bell icon. That's how the truth about China survives on YouTube. Don't let it disappear. Thank you very much. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Dual-Core Revolution. To really understand why Hanyuan 2 is causing such a massive stir across the globe, we have to look at how it totally breaks the traditional mold. Western tech giants largely rely on superconducting systems, basically artificial atoms sitting on silicon chips, and those delicate setups require massive multi-million-dollar dilution refrigerators just to prevent environmental noise and heat from instantly destroying the fragile quantum state. But this new system from CAS, cold atom technology, it uses something called neutral atom technology. Instead of deep freezing the entire room, it uses highly precise laser arrays to trap and suspend uncharged individual atoms in a vacuum. By manipulating these neutral atoms directly with precisely tuned lasers, the system itself can operate at room temperature. The cryogenic chains have been completely cut. And here is where the so-called dual-core magic actually happens. The system integrates 100 atoms of rubidium-85 and 100 atoms of rubidium-87, essentially creating two totally independent arrays operating in tandem. Because these two isotopes have fundamentally different transition frequencies, they massively reduce optical crosstalk. Think of it kind of like two different radio stations broadcasting in the exact same room. Because they're on completely different frequencies, they don't interfere with one another at all. This architectural pivot lets them operate in main core plus auxiliary core mode, where one array can literally perform real-time error correction on the other. Chapter 2. The energy miracle. Now, while that dual-core architecture is a brilliant engineering feat, the absolute most staggering data point of the entire Hanyuan 2 announcement is its power consumption. Data compiled by the Quantum Computing Report highlights a stark contrast. Traditional superconducting systems draw massive amounts of power, often 15 to 25 kilowatts, just to run the cryogenic labs keeping things cold enough to operate. The Hanyuan 2, however, sidesteps this energy trap entirely. The total system power draw of the Hanyuan 2 is less than 7 kilowatts. Just think about that for a second. To put that into perspective, that's comparable to running just a couple of high-powered espresso machines or powering a single standard IT server rack. In the realm of quantum space, an energy footprint this impossibly small is practically unheard of. And because of that miraculous energy efficiency, the Hanyuan 2 doesn't need a sprawling, highly specialized facility. It operates entirely within a standard, dark, rack-mount cabinet. No complex cryogenic environments, just efficient laser cooling tucked away inside a black box. This translates to a terrifyingly massive commercial and geopolitical advantage. These computers can be rapidly deployed in ordinary office buildings or slotted right into standard data centers anywhere on the globe, operating completely unnoticed. Chapter 3, the missing benchmark mystery. Okay, but before we get completely swept up in the hype, we need to put our investigator hats back on and look at the glaring holes in this dossier. Consider this assessment from Marine Ivicek at Post Quantum. Quote, no gate fidelity data, no error rates. Without these, qubit count is a vanity metric. End quote. Look, a 200-qubit machine sounds revolutionary, but in the quantum realm, qubits are incredibly fragile. If they're noisy and prone to calculation errors, a machine with just 10 high-fidelity qubits is actually vastly more powerful than a noisy 200-qubit system. And right now, CAS cold atom technology has released 0 peer-reviewed performance data to prove their qubits actually work as flawlessly as intended. Even if we do take the 200-qubit claim at face value, the global landscape actually tells a slightly different story. According to trackers from Tom's Hardware and Post Quantum, Hanyuan 2 actually lags significantly behind Western leaders in pure scale. Back in 2023, the American firm Atom Computing demonstrated an array with 1,180 qubits, and companies like Quera have shown arrays trapping thousands of atoms. So the world's first title they are aggressively claiming relies heavily on the technicality of their dual-core configuration rather than holding the record for raw processing power. When we look at this impartially, we are basically staring at a massive board of missing evidence. 0 peer-reviewed papers. Undisclosed coherence times, meaning we literally have no idea how long these qubits can actually maintain their quantum state before collapsing. There's absolutely no independent third-party verification. And finally, a lot of international analysts are left wondering if dual-core is merely a clever marketing analogy borrowing prestige from classical computer CPUs rather than representing a single, fully entangled quantum state. Chapter 4. China's Strategic Master Plan. So despite those missing benchmarks, entirely dismissing the Hanyuan 2 would be a monumental mistake. Zooming out from the immediate hardware specs reveals a much broader, incredibly high-stakes strategy. This technology is a maneuver designed for ultimate geopolitical survival. Historically, China's quantum ambitions were heavily tethered to complex, restricted Western cryogenic components. By pivoting entirely to neutral atom technology, they completely bypassed those Western export controls. From the fundamental chip manufacturing right up to the precise laser modulation, they've achieved an end-to-end domestic supply chain. It's a silent declaration of total technological independence, and they are moving aggressively to cement this advantage. Quantum technology has been designated as a paramount future industry under China's massive 15 five-year plan. They aren't just leaving these machines to gather dust in academic labs either, they are actively selling them. The previous generation, Hanyuan 1, was already commercially delivered to a subsidiary of China Mobile. And most remarkably, they've already secured an international quantum export order to Pakistan. This is quantum diplomacy happening in real time, literally rewriting international alliances with high-tech hardware. Chapter 5. Next steps and goodbye. As we look ahead, CS cold atom technology is on a rapid, almost frightening acceleration path. They're currently commercializing this 100 to 200 qubit phase, but their roadmap is profoundly aggressive. We're talking 500-plus multi-core systems by 2027, over 1,000 qubits integrated with AI-driven atom rearrangement by 2028, and by 2030, fully fault-tolerant quantum systems. Because of the modular, room-temperature nature of their cabinets, this kind of aggressive scaling is physically possible without having to build giant, specialized refrigerated warehouses. Ultimately, we're watching the tech world increasingly split into 2 isolated, highly secretive spheres. On one side, the West pushing for massive, ultra-cold processing power. On the other, the East quietly deploying accessible room-temperature boxes. The architecture of the future is fracturing right before our eyes, which leaves us with one final provocative question. When the dust settles, will true global dominance be decided simply by who can boast the highest raw qubit count inside a fragile, freezing laboratory, or will it be won by the nation that achieves ultimate supply chain survival? deploying reliable room-temperature machines in the shadows across the globe. That is the true mystery behind the Hanyuan 2. Thank you for joining this explainer. Keep exploring, keep questioning the data behind the headlines, and until next time, goodbye.